Welcome everyone to Daily Origins Lifestyle Video Series, A Year in the Pandemic. We are going to be talking with business owners about their ups and downs throughout this full year in our pandemic. And today we have Taryn Burns, who is the owner and founder of Taryn Burns Yoga. And she's going to tell us everything that it took from her to do a in-person business and go straight to virtual. So welcome, Taryn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I know I just gave a little bit about you, but share who you are, where you came from, all about Taryn Burns.
Yes. So I've been a full-time yoga teacher for about 3 years now in the Boston area. And until last March, all of that was in person. So I was going to team practices in terms of my yoga for athletes portion of my business, for going into corporate settings, for working with my high performers. And come March, all of that went away and we had to do a quick pivot, keep things going, keep the yoga happening. Only now it was through the virtual space.
It's so crazy. We've taken class, you've worked with me before, so it was such a pivot because I admired all your hard work that you've had and made such a network for yourself within the Boston area. So it's really admirable that you were able to take that and bring it into a virtual. So tell us what it was like to really get comfortable with on-screen performance, I'll say.
Yeah, I think virtual fitness has been around. I think that in the last year, one thing that has been really exciting is the ability to work with my clients, my students on a more consistent basis because we don't have the commute time. We don't have the same scheduling conflicts that maybe we did before. And at the same time, there's also not the same amount of pressure as the teacher for me to be delivering this super, super buttoned up, this super high production product, right? Everybody had the rug taken out from underneath them. And there's this grace period that I think was so valuable to myself as a teacher, but also to the students where we were really all trying to figure out this new life together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt very empowered in a way that I hadn't felt before when I had the pressure of going and really performing in a studio or performing at a live event. In so many ways, I feel like I got back to the true purpose of yoga and actually allowed my students to start to develop a home practice, which I find to be one of the most difficult, but also one of the truest forms of the practice.
Right. And I think at-home practice is something that the beginner or even advanced, it's so easy for someone to adapt to doing yoga at home because really all you need is yourself and a mat. And hopefully, there's tons of reputable yoga instructors out there. So it's really great that it's able to accommodate the at-home where in comparison, if you're doing a strength training class all the time, you might not have those tools at home. But so when you came up on doing virtual classes, were there any obstacles when you were launching your virtual side of the business?
There were. I think navigating my relationships with brands and studios and businesses and just figuring out what made the most sense. So for me at this point, here we are coming on 1 year, I actually am now doing pretty much 100% of my business is on my own. I'm contracted with a few organizations still, but really it's that Taryn Burns Yoga piece instead of me as Taryn Burns, the instructor, going into another studio or another setting. So navigating those relationships, I'm really fortunate that I have very, very thoughtful partners that once it made sense for us to either go our separate ways or put a pause, again, we're all just figuring it out together.
Right.
So that was very empowering. And I also felt like instead of me trying to fit one of my classes onto a bigger schedule, now I got to really lean into what it was that I wanted to be teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I feel grounded in my teachings, the more that the right student is finding me. So I've actually found a lot of success this last year because I've been able to lean in a little bit more into my own stuff.
That's really so great. And I was just going to get into the next, what's something good that wasn't expected is would you say that's the most unexpected good part about being virtual right now?
Definitely. There were many, many times where I had a lot of ideas, but I was waiting for another brand or company to partner with me on it. And a lot of my ideas that I thought I was going to do for myself, I was thinking like 3, 4, maybe even 5 years out. But again, that grace period, I've been able to pilot quite a few programs and really try things out. So instead of just doing drop-in classes, I've actually shifted to a model that's more progressive programming for yoga. So a little bit more in line with how I work with corporate clients or work with teams and athletes. So that way it's not just the same thing every Thursday, but we're really building that strong foundation, getting our skills down, and then building into that peak pose or into that peak flow.
That I love that, and I've always admired that about your programming is that you take you want to build the endurance with somebody to get to the places that they want to go and the goals that they have. So that's really amazing. For up and coming yoga instructors or even people who are in fitness or trying to break into virtual fitness, how do you balance doing the free classes to your paid? So like, do you see the value of having a lot of free classes, or do you try to find a better balance of that?
That's a great question. I'm looking at it right now. So I'm looking past the screen, but I have a sticky note up on my wall that says to focus on client retention versus client acquisition. And I think especially in the virtual space right now, I have found that if I continue to figure out how I can best serve my core group of clients, and they're different, whether it's one of my corporate clients or my program clients, what is it that they need? Okay, that's where most of my focus is going to go. However, making sure that there are easy points of entry for maybe it's a new company or somebody that's interested in trying one of my programs, allowing them to get a feel for what my style is to make sure that it's worth investing that type of time and money, I think is very important.
Right.
So the answer is, I think it's both. I think it's finding the balance of both, but also understand what that student or what that consumer journey is. So if you are going to be offering something for free, what are you guiding them towards? How are you educating that student, that client, so after their time with you, they feel more empowered and they feel more informed to make a decision of how they could best work with you in the future.
Yeah. I mean, you're really diving into business analytics and projection for your own business. As like a new business owner, what kind of advice would you give someone knowing maybe they don't have the same background as you?
Yeah, I think it's important to call out that while I am a full-time yoga instructor now, I did used to work for a sportswear brand. Can't really see it, but I got and then I worked at a design agency. And when I was at the design agency, we would scope a lot of different projects. So understanding that my offerings as a teacher are going to be varied depending on what it is that I'm delivering, I think is a really, really valuable lesson that I learned from that past life that I had and now apply to my business now. And figuring out your sweet spots, right? Like, what do you really enjoy teaching? When do you feel energized after you've been teaching a class or teaching a group? There are certain environments that I realize, like, that really sucks a lot of energy out of me because I feel like I'm performing.
Mm-hmm.
I do better when I feel like I'm really able to teach, feel like I'm able to educate. So again, one of the silver linings about this pandemic is having the time and space to evaluate what am I putting out there? How am I keeping a diverse offering so that all my eggs are in one basket? And then I can make very informed decision as to how I'm building out my business, how I'm building out my offerings moving forward with some specific goals in mind.
It's really great and helpful advice. When you talk about scope, can you break down like what scope means for somebody who might not know?
Absolutely. So I have done a lot of events, whether it's with brands in Boston or I know we met through a gym in the Boston area. An event is going to take a lot more legwork for a 1-hour class, a 1-hour session. So that's going to be a higher price point for me versus a weekly drop-in class. So a lot of the legwork happens at the beginning, and it's more of just continuing to show up. So understanding the amount of energy and effort that is going on behind the scenes. I always try to remind younger teachers that I maybe am mentoring or having a conversation with, people aren't just buying that hour, they're buying everything that goes into that hour. So yes, you are serving the student that shows up, but if you're partnering with a real estate company and they're paying you because your class is driving traffic to their business complex, that's a higher value, a higher price point. On the flip side, if I'm working with an individual client and I have my private sessions with them, it's a lot for me as a teacher, similar to private training, to get to know a student, to get to know a client. So I try to offer incentives. If you buy a 10-pack with me, we become much more efficient in me knowing what you need that day and how we're progressively building your practice. So there is that incentive of, okay, if you buy a 10-pack, you're going to have a discounted rate as opposed to just that one-off.
Right.
Back into that client retention. It is really, really hard for me to find 10 private clients. However, if I have one client and I work with them 10 times, that is a lot less effort and I'm still adding value and then receiving the money that I need to run my business.
Right. So you're bringing out really great points of, valuing your clients and the ones that you have and really nurturing those relationships with your clients. I'm sure if you wanted to grow and you had the capacity to take on more, then your attention can focus on your growth side. But as, maybe somebody who's up and coming, that's a great place to start and really focus on. And I appreciate you pointing that out. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with all the questions. I would love to hear a little bit more about the programs that you have in place right now, and how people can find you.
Yes. So I have programs called the Reset by Taryn, and they range from 3 weeks to 7 weeks. Some of them are more yoga asana based, so that's your movement practice. Others are more breath work or meditation based. So kind of depending on what you need out of your yoga practice, there is probably a program for you. Right now, all of them are done live with an on-demand recorded option in case you can't make a session. Maybe some more on-demand options coming in the future. Again, we're going to figure it out as we go. What do people actually need? I found that a lot of people really need the accountability of having something to show up for these days. And there's so much power in that connecting to community piece. So I think that's why these programs have been successful. That's really my only public offering. I do a lot with some of the schools around town and have corporate clients. So obviously, if anyone is listening and a corporate program is of interest or a team program is of interest, that is always a conversation I'd love to have.
Awesome.
But in terms of dropping in, it's the Reset by Taryn.
That's amazing. I love all your classes. I think you're doing a great job. Just a fun question, like if you could pull out one technology piece that you would purchase last March, or actually last February before this all happened, if you had a little glimpse into the future, what would you tell your past self?
Oh man, I was pretty quick to get the ring light. And I luckily already had the microphone. So I feel like those were already taken care of. I think it's the camera. I think that figuring out how to screen capture something, but then also have it on a memory stick, that's been a little bit of a slow roll for me. So camera, at the same time, I just had a conversation with a peer of mine earlier this morning, and we agreed that if somebody can hear you well, and you're concise and thorough with your cueing, they probably don't have to look to the screen as much. So for the sake of even though I already have it, I think that the microphone and sound quality is number one.
Oh, I agree completely. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Figure out what my answer was, but yeah, first.
Yep.
And then than the visual, because you can learn so much by listening to somebody and be able to get yourself through a yoga practice or through a workout.
No, I can't agree more. I think once you're in the middle of a yoga flow, if you can hear the cues, it kind of can bring you right back into class itself with a bunch of people around you. You know, you just kind of follow along. And what I've learned from yoga, it's really not about what your neighbor is doing or what poses or how fast they're going. It's really all about you. So sometimes even closing your eyes, which goes to your point, like the visual might not be as important as the audio.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Taryn. Is there a website and Instagram handle, anything else you want to share with us? I'm sure I will make sure to tag and post all that so everybody can, you know, in our description be able to get to Taryn's website, but just so they can know too.
Yes. So I feel like I'm an influencer. Like, subscribe.
Exactly.
It's TarynBurns.com. And then my Instagram is @TarynBurns_yoga.
Wonderful. Thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.